Warning: the following content may be disturbing to some individuals. Consumer discretion is advised.
Sirens of the supernatural.
Welcome to our third episode, and if you love cryptids and weird creatures, you're in for a treat. Ryan and I are here to discuss everything from Bigfoot to the Wampus creature, the Wampus cat. Ryan, have you heard about any cryptids while we were growing up in our neck of the woods in Southwest Virginia?
My grandmother, she had told a story about being out in the field back when I was raising gardens, and they'd sent her to the house to do something. And she had walked in through the front door and seen something standing in the house. According to her, it was taller than, Papa and some of the other fellows who were well over 6 feet at the time. And, it had like reddish brown hair, very big. It was standing by the fireplace. So naturally, her being a young teenage girl, she got scared. She took off the other way. And by the time she got back with the menfolk and the grown-ups, it was gone. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it, made its way through a window, up a fireplace, out the back door. But it scared her pretty tremendously. And the menfolk didn't know what to think about it, and couldn't find a trace of it after the fact.
Wow. I remember her telling us that story. And even as an older woman, you could tell she was still scared when she talked about it. It really did stay with her. And who knows what that was. We never did find out. She never did find out. But today, we're going to start out by talking about one of the most feared, elusive, and popular cryptids of all time. I think you all know who it is. Bigfoot, aka Sasquatch. And I have to admit, I'd never even heard the word cryptid until I started listening to some other podcasts and heard that word and realized that it encapsulates all kinds of creatures, from skinwalkers to werewolves, Bigfoot, and some others we'll talk about today. But I always pictured Bigfoot as the Sasquatch from Harry and the Hendersons, because that was one of my favorite movies growing up. And, I pictured him as some big, hairy, goofy, friendly kind of ape-like creature. And what I've heard from people who have reported really seeing this creature, they describe him as up to 8 or 9 feet tall. So really tall, hairy, walks on 2 legs, smells bad, and most often stays out of sight in the deep forest and mountains where people don't go. I was doing some research, and I found out the Washington National Guard government website stated that Native Americans had many legends about a Sasquatch-like creature even before the settlers came and began seeing the creature in the 1800s. And since then, Bigfoot sightings have been reported in every single U.S. state, even Hawaii, which was surprising to me. And we know as well as in many parts of Canada. And Washington state leads with the largest number of reports at 676. Now, I don't know if it was coincidence or what, but just this past week, there was a YouTube video that came out, and this video was taken by a man and his wife that were on a train near Silverton, Colorado. And the man just had his phone, I guess, and it was in the middle of the day taking, video of the scenery when he saw something moving. And he captured what does look like a Sasquatch creature. And so this video is going viral on social media. And on one of the videos, they zoom in to like 200 and 350% on this creature so you can really see it. And if it's a fake or a hoax, it's a pretty darn good one. Ron, I don't know if have you seen that particular video?
Yeah, I have seen it, and it's interesting, because a lot of us we're busy with the hustle and bustle of everyday life. We're driving on the freeway, driving by the woods, driving by deserts, open fields, and we don't pay attention. So, sometimes if you just slow down and just kind of look around, it's hard to say you won't see something like that. And you mentioned back, like the Washington National Guard, the website. I know me being in the Army, there was a book, and I've actually seen it. It's a survival guide given out by the Army back in the early 50s and 60s. And there's actually a section in there that, like when you go through maps and map reading, terrain, stuff like that, and there's certain areas that said Bigfoot area. And it's actually in an official Army handbook for survival training. So I thought that was really interesting.
That is interesting. I'll try to get that video up and share it on our Sirens and Supernatural YouTube and our other socials so that you guys can see it out there in listener land if you're interested. So we'll try to get that up for you soon.
But there's hundreds of sightings all over the Appalachian states too, not just, Virginia. There's West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. And with those sightings, there'll come many stories. We're going to share 3 stories that we've come across that's going to put Bigfoot really close to home, at least the areas where we was raised in the mountains and hollers of the Appalachian Mountains. And the first one, I'll go ahead and let you know, it's about a mysterious creature, has allegedly been seen in the wild. It's in the untamed wooded areas in Virginia, and it's been seen almost since the first settlers arrived. And there's been 86 reported sightings since 1970s. The state even holds an annual Virginia Bigfoot conference. So our first story is one of the most recent sightings in Virginia coming to us courtesy of the Bigfoot Researchers Field Organization, or BRFO, as mentioned earlier. It happened, like most stories happen, on a cold pre-dawn morning. It was in January in 2023. A guy was deer hunting. He was experienced in the woods. He was in Glade Mountains in Smith County, Virginia. On his way to the hunting blind, he goes in before dark, which most hunters do, and all you have is a flashlight guiding your way, which makes it a little bit more creepy anyways. And he was walking along an old logging road when he saw, and this is his quote, he saw a dark mass about 40 yards in front of him. And at first he thought he walked up on a bedded bear, but once he stopped and actually pointed the flashlight in this direction to kind of see what it was, the creature actually rose and stood up to a vertical stance. And before turning and walking away, the hunter said he saw a solid colored creature that was very tall and made basically no noise at all. I mean, that's being something in January, everything is crispy. When you step on something, it's going to make crunches and things like that. There may even be snow on the ground. And the hunter was 35 years old. He's not been afraid of the woods or anything like that. He's been in the woods his whole life. And he himself was 6'3", weighed 230 pounds. And he said that the animal was taller and broader and even bigger than he was. And it terrified him to the point that his hair actually stood up. So, that's something to that for, a man that's accustomed to the woods, is not afraid of anything. He's used to being around bears and all kinds of different wildlife. To come across something unknown and something as eerie or strange as that, and being a big fella, that's got to be something to it.
Right.
So there's also a YouTube channel. It's called Mountain Roots. It gives us a town that's completely embraced to its connection with mysteries and creatures, and even give it a new name. Its video is called Appalachian Mystery, the Woodbooger of Norton, Virginia. And it shares what the local people call it, the Woodbooger, or Booger for short. Now, Norton's a town in our neck of the woods. It's 30 minutes from where I was raised. It has businesses named after the Woodbooger, Sasquatch likenesses on signs, art, shops, clothing, all kinds of things as far as Bigfoot paraphernalia, Woodbooger. And you can even grab some grub at the Woodbooger Grill or find fun for the whole family at the annual Woodbooger Festival. And this year it's going to be October 21st. basically the day after this episode airs. So you guys, if you're around, you want to go check that out, it'll be a fun thing for you guys to do. And also there's a TV show, Finding Bigfoot, put Norton on the map as a Sasquatch hotbed, which shares stories of local sightings on an episode that's actually filmed there.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as we know, Norton's the only town that has set aside an official designated habitat for Bigfoot, Sasquatch / Woodbooger at the Flag Rock in the High Knob Recreation Area. It recognizes it as an endangered species, and visitors will see a life-size Woodbooger statue, or if you're lucky, you might even find a real thing. There's a lot of animals up in that area. I've been familiar with it all my life. It looks out over the remote mountains from Flag Rock. The overlook there, it's not difficult to imagine many creatures that yet to be found out there because it's all just wood life. And you can watch the full video we mentioned earlier on the Mountain Roots YouTube channel and find out more information on the Woodbooger Sanctuary, the official website. And we can also, if you have any other websites or links like that, we can include those on our social medias to kind of help that get out there as well.
Now, Ron, have you ever been to Norton's Woodbooger Festival? I think that would be so much fun.
I haven't been to the festival. I've been to the Flag Rock. I'm pretty sure I ate at the restaurant. The food there was pretty good. Enjoyed it. I like eating at local places, different things like that. So I even had a story told to me by a real close family member a while back, a place called Rabbit Ridge, which is very close to where he was raised. Mm-hmm. They was kind of out just walking one evening, and they heard a lot of strange noises, and they heard knocks, and then some things got thrown at them from the woods. So they're not real sure, and that kind of goes hand in hand with some of the stories you tell, that if you happen to come across an area that might be habitated by a Woodbooger or Sasquatch or one of the cryptids like you're talking about. So I'm kind of curious. I may like to get back in their woods and kind of go up in there for a day or two just to see if I can find anything.
Well, be sure you take your phone and video. You might be the first person ever to record a Sasquatch.
That'd be fun. It might be the last person too.
It might be. I just think that name Woodbooger that they gave it is so, that's so Southwest Virginia. I love it. I just love it. Well, he's been talking about Virginia, but West Virginia has had its fair share of sightings too. There's a group online called Blue Ridge Outdoors, and they have a subgroup called Bigfoot 911, and it's on Facebook. You can find the Bigfoot 911 group on Facebook and even join it if you want to. About 9 members of their group one night in August 2017 were in McDowell County in western North Carolina, and they claimed that they saw the creature, and it was a large bipedal animal covered in solid black hair except for on its face. And then later, I did some more research, and I found out that later a local shaman came forward and said that what the group actually saw was him dressed in animal skins. But they argued back and said, no, it had to be a Sasquatch because it stood around 8 feet tall and moved with speed that was unmatched by any human. So that's one that has been spotted supposedly in my neck of the woods in western North Carolina. And then in Fayette County, West Virginia, there was another couple a couple years later in 2019. They were at the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve, and they saw and said they photographed a Sasquatch near the river. The husband was also a hunter. He was a coal miner, former U.S. Marine, somebody really familiar with the outdoors. This is what he said. I didn't believe in Bigfoot. I 100% didn't believe in it. And I said that people who claimed they saw it were crazy. But on this hunting trip, he had hung up a camera 9 feet off the ground with a light that was pointing down. And he was waiting in his hunting blind to see what had been taking the food that he'd been leaving out to attract game because it kept disappearing. So that night, he said a large creature arrived, passed directly in front of the hanging light, which was at least 9 feet tall. So he knew it couldn't be a bear or any other animal he'd seen in those woods. So a few days later, because he didn't get a good look at it, he came back and brought his wife with him. And their plan was to wait quietly for it to get dark, see if the creature returned. But while it was still light, they heard something and they spotted what the wife calls a Bigfoot. He took a photo with his phone, and he claims that you could see part of the Bigfoot as it retreated back into the trees. And then he got the courage about a month later to go back. And when he got there, he said his entire hunting blind had been like shredded, just shredded. But that picture is also floating around on the internet. And I've seen it. If I can find it, I'll share it on our socials so that all you can see it out there if you're interested. Bigfoot has many fans in Appalachia, from the Sasquatch Museum in Blue Ridge, Georgia, to statues of the hairy creature popping up everywhere. They even put one on the corner on Main Street in my town about a month ago. So I'm going to snap a picture of that and put it on our socials so that you all can enjoy it too. I'm not sure why they did that. One day it wasn't there, and then the next day it was there, and it's become really popular. The Western Air Defense sector of the Washington Air National Guard adopted Bigfoot as their mascot. And I know I live near Boone, North Carolina, and we have the Boone Bigfoots. We've got the Appalachian Football Club in Boone have also chosen Bigfoot as their mascot. And I know all across the nation, Bigfoot is popular, and sports teams, mascots, a lot of things are named after him. And so he has folklore, legends, documentaries, websites, movies, and you can even find the word Sasquatch in most dictionaries. I say that makes him real, but Ron, you might disagree.
Actually, I'm one of the people that believe in being, raised in the mountains, prior military, doing things like that. I've had conversations with other people, that was military, experienced hunters, and I always ask them the same question, and it's hard for them to give me a legitimate answer. So I asked them, I'm like, okay, if you went in the woods and you didn't want somebody to find you, and it's an area that you've known your whole life or you're familiar with, could somebody find you? And they're like, it could be ego, it could be, just them bragging, whatever. And they're like, no, they couldn't find me. I'm like, okay. Well, if you imagine an animal with superior eyesight, superior hearing, and especially superior smelling, because we have an odor too, you really think you would find them if they honestly, truly did not want you to? So, see, they have to answer their own question, because if they could do it, why couldn't it?
Right.
And they're like, well, I've hunted these woods my whole life and haven't seen one. And I was like, yeah, there's a lot of people go deer hunting, never get a deer either, or see things like that. So you never can say. So I'm not one of these people say never.
Right.
I think there's possibilities of all kinds of things out there that we don't know about.
Exactly. They're discovering new species every day, all over the world, in the ocean, in the rainforest, and we have some of the thickest mountainous areas on the globe. So yeah, I'm with you on that. So that is our spiel about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or the Woodbooger, whatever you want to call him. And after the break, we'll be right back with some more cryptids.
Stay tuned for more Sirens of the Supernatural.
I'm Rhonda with Sirens of the Supernatural, and we're inviting you to tune in to our very special Halloween episode. Our team will be doing some on-site investigating at a nearly 200-year-old building where ghosts have shown themselves through the decades and still are.
Welcome back to Sirens of the Supernatural.
We have several other cryptids or unknowns out there that sounds a lot like our furry Sasquatch friend. So we have one, which I've never heard of. It's called the Grafton Monster. That's another cryptid, and it's seen in West Virginia for the past 7 decades. It's supposedly a huge bipedal beast that eats livestock. It's got a head that sits oddly low in front of its furry body, and it's believed to weigh about 1,500 pounds. So that's huge. We also have the raven mocker. Now, that's a shape-shifting Bigfoot. It's about 7 foot tall, and according to Cherokee legends in southwestern Virginia, it has eerie eyes of solid white. It has a thick black fur. This Bigfoot's able to shift into any animal or make it look like an old man or an old woman. And when in human shape, the raven mocker can lurk among the unsuspecting people and eat their hearts from their chest without even leaving a mark. So the next time you guys go out in public, be careful. Don't get too close to nobody. You never know. Maybe a raven mocker.
Yeah.
So there's another creature lurking in the Appalachian Mountains that's reportedly supposed to be a black panther. Now, what is a black panther? Basically has yellow eyes, sharp fangs. They're also spotted in the Appalachian Mountains. And you bet there's been people that spotted and heard these creatures since the 1800s, from the Appalachians to the Ozarks, and even as far as Texas. One story from Arkansas tells us about a mother who was at home with her 2 children when a wild panther-like creature attacked her front door trying to get into their home. But luckily, the mother had a musket, and of course, being, back in that day, she knew how to use it, and probably very well, because she shot through the door and she killed it. The next morning, what looked like an enormous black mountain lion lay dead on her porch. So wild black panthers are supposedly not native to these areas. Something has been spotted in the mountain regions for centuries, even in southwestern Virginia coal country where we grew up. So, Rhonda, do you have anything, or have you heard anything about black panthers?
Oh yeah, I remember when I was a little girl, we would stay with Mama and Papa. She would tell me that she would tell all of us kids, don't go back in those deep woods behind the garden because a panther will get you. There's black panthers out there. And we kind of took it with a grain of salt and didn't really believe it. And one night I was up there, I probably was about 10 or 11 at this point in time. And I had to get up to go to the bathroom that night. And as I was going through, you had to go through their dining room and kitchen to get to the bathroom. And I saw a figure standing at the back door, and it was Mama. And she motioned me to come over there, and she said, shh, listen. And what I heard, I can only describe, it sounded like a woman screaming. And it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And Mama said, that's a panther. That's why you're not supposed to go down in those woods. And she said, it sounds like a woman screaming. And so ever since then, buddy, I stuck close to the house, and I wouldn't dare go down in those woods after that, because, and especially in the evening time, or if it was near dark, because that just chilled me. I've never heard a sound like it since. I don't know if it was really a panther, but I know that she said that there were panthers back in those woods. Did you ever get to hear one, Ryan?
Actually, I did. And, some of us kids at nighttime, that's when we'd get out in the yard, and we'd hoop and holler. And some of us, we'd get out there and start hollering or howling, just goofing around. And it would be dark. There wouldn't be no lights on. Just you'd be running each other, just goofing around. And you'd start screaming and hollering. And every now and then you'd hear something in the distance start hollering back. And you're exactly right. It sounded like a woman screaming or like a baby crying. Mm-hmm. Or every now and then, wouldn't be like a panther, you'd hear an eerie howl. But if it got too close, because you can hear echo, you'd always hear Mama, if she was in the house, she was, okay, that's enough, kids. Y'all need to quit doing that stuff, right? Y'all calling something in you don't want near the house. And so she'd make it stop. But one time I actually think I did see a panther. I was at a neighbor's house, and a lot of the men and folk, they'd sit around and they'd play cards. And I was young, maybe I don't even know if I was 10, 11. And I went around one side of the house, and I went around one side of the house. I could have swore was a large black cat. I mean, it wasn't a house cat. It had to be a panther or something. And when I come around one side, it come around the other, and it was bigger than a dog. So, and it looked just like that, big yellow eyes. I didn't really see his teeth because it wasn't like snarling at me or anything. But I went one way, went back in the house, and yelled at the men, the grown-ups, and they come back out there, and they couldn't see it. So I'm imagining I went around one side, it saw me, and I squalled, and it scared it, and it went the other way.
Yeah.
I could have swore I saw a panther when I was a kid. It was something, I don't know, but to me, that's the only thing I can explain it as being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Ryan, our producer, another cousin of ours, he said that about 10 years ago, he saw footage of a black panther in western North Carolina. A man had captured it on a trail cam and brought it and let some of the people see it. And he said it was a black panther. And around Wilkesboro, that's not too far from where I live now. So
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we better look out, I guess. There's another creature called the wampus beast that sounds a lot like what we've been talking about too. And it's a large black cat-like creature. It's been seen around Pleasants County, West Virginia, so across the border kind of from where we grew up. They say it's about 4 times bigger than a male mountain lion, which is pretty big, has enormous paws, and weighs in at around 500 to 600 pounds. Now, I'm not sure where the name wampus beast comes from, but all of these creatures, it seems like they're seen in different parts and people give them different names.
There's also another cryptid we want to mention. He's actually going to get his own future episode. That's going to be the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Now, this is a humanoid-like creature with bright red eyes, has wings that's supposedly like 10 foot across. It's become a real local celebrity after numerous sightings in and around the town. Some people believe that a Mothman sighting was a predictor of disasters such as the collapse of Silver Bridge. That's a tragedy that killed more than 40 people. So if you're heading north in the Appalachians, and we encounter the legends of Dwayyo. Now, Kentucky, Tennessee Living Online publication tells us that the Dwayyo is a large humanoid wolf-like or dog-like creature. It's 6 to 9 feet tall that can allegedly walk on 2 legs and use its front legs as arms similar to a human. It's furry with a long bushy tail and has an eerie, piercing howl. It's had many vicious attacks on any creature that dares across its path and has been reported to attack and mutilate farm animals. And it sounds like what we would call a werewolf. Mm-hmm. Now, this thing's been documented and had sightings from 1944 all the way to 1978 and so on by park rangers, campers, hunters, and residents in wooded areas of Frederick County, Maryland. This led to the name Maryland Wolfman. The first witnesses that was recorded was in 1944, and he only heard the howling and found footprints of the creature that had left behind. Then the creature seemed to have disappeared until November of 1965, when a resident living near a state park in the area got up to investigate an outside noise one night and came upon a wolf-like creature that he said was as big as a bear. This creature attacked him, but he was lucky and fought it off, and it ran into the woods. The local newspaper, the Frederick News Post, reported the entire encounter. For many weeks after the story came out, several others claimed they spotted the creature and heard its eerie howls. But by late December, there were no additional Dwayyo sightings, and people eventually forgot about it. That was until the summer of 1966. A camper in the area said he spotted the creature as it entered his campsite, and then it went on its way. 10 years later, 2 men driving along Route 77 saw what they described looked like the Dwayyo. In 1978, 2 park rangers were the last to see the creature, and they said it looked like a huge wolf running on 2 legs. Now, the Travel Channel even website mentions a similar creature that's been spotted in around Wolf County, Kentucky since the 1970s. On the Got Mountain Life website, a reader commented on a 2021 that he had seen a creature matching the Dwayyo's description outside his bedroom window when he was just a child. He described it as having a wolf head on an upright body that was at least 9 foot tall. And mesmerized, he watched it walk the length of his house, then turn around and go behind the back of the house. When he freaked out, his parents told him it was just a dream.
What do you think, Ron? Do you think that all those sightings started happening because of the first sighting? Do you think like all those people really saw it, or like some people saw it at the beginning and then other people started coming out of the woodworks because they wanted their like 5 minutes of fame or whatever from reporting it?
I think it's a combination of both, because a lot of people don't want to be, other people thinking they're crazy, or thinking less of them, but when one person sees it and they're like, well, I did kind of see something like that. And it could be told in hushed whispers or maybe around campfires or things like that. A lot of the stories like we read have been doing. But I think it's a combination of both. I think some people are just afraid to come out of the woodworks to tell people. Other maybe looking for some popularity. But I think there's some genuine sincerity to some of this stuff, because I've seen things and heard things I can't explain.
Right.
So I think it's a combination of all of it. You just kind of weed through and research the facts and figure out what's right and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
With all different beasts and cryptids, and whether it be a woodbooger, whether it be a panther, there's always got to be a yin to a yang. There's another picture that's out there. It's a cryptid of the Maryland Appalachian Mountains. It's actually said to be the Dwayyo's vicious flying enemy. So these two things apparently do not get along. And this is called the snallygaster. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
When you get into this stuff, it kind of makes you realize, hey, there's some words out there you've never seen before. But this is the legend. The Legend of America website tells us that this is a creature that was dragon-like. It's half reptile, half bird, cave dweller. So you can imagine something big like that. So the snallygaster legend seems to have come to the U.S. with German immigrants who settled in the area of Maryland in the early 1700s. Their name for the winged beast was Snellergeist. Snellergeist, which translates to quick spirit or ghost, quick ghost. Quick and silent, it allegedly swooped down on its victim from above. It tore into its catch with a metallic-like beak and razor-sharp teeth. So some said it sucked all the blood from its prey, and its wingspan was described as 12 to 14 feet wide. So this is a huge, huge animal or creature. And newspapers ran reports of the beast from 1730s up to 1932. And this was the year a newspaper published the story that the snallygaster had been lured to a moonshine still in Washington County, Maryland, where the notorious fumes overcame it and the creature drowned in an alcohol vat.
I figured you'd get a kick out of that.
So, hey, leave it up to a bunch of redneck hillbillies to give it. The only way we want to beat this thing, we're going to get drunk and give it alcohol poisoning, right? So, I'm sure some moonshiner back in the day said, "I got a way to fix this."
Oh my goodness, that made me laugh. Oh, we'll be back after this quick break with a cryptid story called Backwoods Boogeyman. So stay tuned, everybody.
Stay tuned for more Sirens of the Supernatural.
Hey, this is Lindsay. I do Sunday Scaries, and for the days leading up to our investigation, I'll be tuning in and telling you guys a few of the scary stories of the different ghosts that supposedly haunt the Martha Washington, including a riderless horse that haunts the grounds, and Beth, a nurse who tried to get her union lover back to health, but unfortunately, it took a tragic turn. So tune in to our very exciting episode.
Welcome back to Sirens of the Supernatural.
He'd heard ghost stories all his life. But as a teenager, my father's knowledge of the supernatural exceeded his first-hand experience. When his Scots-Irish ancestors settled in the mountains of southwest Virginia, they brought with them centuries-old stories of haints and knocking spirits, of witches and druids. From his maternal grandma, Granny to me and my cousins, my dad learned the legends of the Cherokee, her people who had first lived on this land. Dad's mama told tales of bears and panthers, copperheads and coyotes, and of strange creatures in the dark, unsettled woods beyond their farm. Like other mothers, she used these stories to keep the children close by, safe and out of trouble. You see, these mountain people lived and breathed superstition. It permeated their lives from birth to the grave, and probably beyond. As the fourth eldest of 7 sons, my dad was cautious, but not overly. He was helpful and quick to behave within sight of his elders, and just as quick to get into mischief when there weren't no grown-ups around. But Daddy's childhood was cut short the summer he turned 13. His father got sick with tuberculosis. They called it consumption in them days, and was shipped off to Catawba Sanatorium, plumb up near Roanoke, where he spent months recovering. With her 2 eldest already married and caring for their own homes and families, Mamaw still had 5 mouths to feed, 6 including hers. If there was to have enough food for the harsh winter, the garden and livestock needed tending, fruits and vegetables canned, and the dwindling supply of meat in the smokehouse replenished. My dad and his brother Herschel, the 2 oldest boys at home, slipped into a routine of daily chores. They milked the cows and hauled water from the well. They cut and gathered hay, weeded and hoed the garden, picked the beans and corn, and at the edge of the woods they gathered wild berries, apples, and pawpaws. They helped keep an eye on the young'uns too. Sometimes they hired out to neighbor farmers to bring in a little extra money. It was a summer of back-breaking work, the kind that made a man out of you. As the leaves put on their fall colors, the 3 younger brothers went on back to school. Dad and Herschel stayed on the farm. Helping feed the family fell mostly to them now. When the weather turned cold of a night, the new winter was coming fast. It was time to kill the hogs and work up the meat. Kinfolk and neighbors come to help, like they did for one another in them days. They all pitched in. The women laughed and talked while making apple butter in a big kettle out back. Axes echoed against trees as the men cut and split wood for feeding the family's fire through the winter. Now, deer was plentiful in them parts, especially in the fall. Squirrels, raccoons, and rabbits too, as they set about storing up their food for the winter. And my dad, he possessed sharp eyes and ears and was naturally good with a gun. He'd go into the woods and come back in no time flat with a prize, fresh meat for supper. Daddy said he enjoyed them times spent hunting. On up through October, him and his coon dog Blue trekked into them woods together every chance they got. As Daddy tells it, Blue was a good dog. He knew how to tree coons at night and trail game quieter than a Cherokee during the day. And that dog wasn't scared of nothing, not even the bang after Dad's trigger pulls. Why, he'd run like a blue streak to retrieve the small game. When they were lucky enough to get a deer, that dog would prance around like he was the one who done killed it, and he'd trail behind with his head held high like the protective rear guard as Dad drug it home. One cold day, on about the 2nd week of November, Mamaw smelled snow in the air. Dad figured it might be his and Blue's last chance to go a-hunting for a while. So he bundled up, packed himself a biscuit and some strong rope, grabbed his gun and knife, and called for Blue. He aimed to be back before dark with some meat for stew. The 2 of them set out at a quick pace. Dad knowed a clearing in the woods where the deer come out of the evening. The sun was sinking lower over the trees and the shadows was starting to fall. They made it to the spot in record time and settled in to wait behind a tree on the edge of the clearing. Blue laid down and rested his head on Dad's leg. They both listened and waited and listened, still as statues, for what seemed like hours. Suddenly, a twig snapped. Blue's head popped up and they was both on the alert. Dad moved his upper body ever so careful to peek around the tree, but nothing was in the clearing. In a few more minutes, Blue sniffed at the sack on Dad's belt, trying to get at the morsel of biscuit. Dad got it out, tore off a little portion to share, and then the only sound was the two of them a-chewing. The next thing Dad remembered was waking up, still sat against that tree. Except now it was dark. As his eyes acclimated, Dad noticed he didn't hear Blue's breathing. He felt the ground beside him and realized that his dog was G-O-N-E, gone. He whispered Blue's name once, then louder, and listened. Nothing. No sound. The woods was eerily quiet and the blackness around him felt heavy. Well, shucks, he thought. No dog, no game, and not even a lantern to get home with. In his hurry, he'd forgot to bring it. But at least he had his gun. Nothing doing now but to get on home. He knew his mama would be wringing her hands with worry. So, he started walking the way him and Blue had come. The only sound was the leaves crunching under his boots. And that's just when them stories he'd heard about these woods come creeping into his head. Breathing a little faster, he picked up the pace. Directly he felt something cold hit his cheek. After a few more somethings, he realized it was snowflakes. Just then, his ears caught a new sound. He judged it was about 10 feet behind him. Rustling leaves was a dead giveaway that something was a trailing him. Dad gripped his gun tighter and stopped. Whatever was behind him stopped too, just as quickly as he'd done. Oh Lord, was it a haint or a witch that lived out here all alone? Then his brain began thinking up all the animals that might track a person and eat a person. Could be a bear, a coyote, a panther. The last one stuck. A panther loved to stalk its prey and came out mostly at night. He willed his body to stay calm. Too scared to turn around and see for himself what was there, Dad began to walk. He stepped slow and purposeful. The hair on the back of his neck stood up when the thing started walking too. He picked up the pace. A little faster he went. A little faster it went. The thing was a-toying with him now. His heart thudded in his chest like John Henry's hammer. He knew if he started running, this thing would run too, and that might be the end of Mamaw's fourth son. Would anybody find him or what was left of him if a wildcat tore him apart out here in the woods? He walked quicker and quicker, as fast as his feet would carry him without breaking into a full run. That thing kept perfect pace with him. His mind raced. He thought he could feel its hot breath getting closer. And suddenly, he could take no more. He broke out in a run, taking long strides and covering some serious ground. He was a fast runner and just might have a chance. Then he saw lights in the distance. Home! Keep a-running, keep a-running. He'd never sprinted faster in his life than he did those last 100 yards to the porch. Keep a-running, his mind shouted. About 60 feet from the house, he started yelling for all he was worth. The door opened as his feet carried him across the yard and jumped the steps. He sailed through the door, hollering, "Don't let it get me! Don't let it get me!" He made it to the kitchen and collapsed on the floor, sucking in air, his blue eyes wild and bulging. His mama and brothers gathered round, all wide-eyed too. Everybody talking at once, trying to figure out just what the heck had happened. Mama finally shushed everyone. She scanned for injuries on her boy, but didn't see nary a one. She finally asked, "What in tarnation, Wayne? What you hollering about chasing you?" It was then Dad saw the rope he'd tied to his britches earlier. It had come loose and more than a good 2 yards of it was lying limp on the floor, connected to the rest of his belt loop. Well, when he saw that, he commenced laughing and laughing. He laughed till they all thought he'd lost his ever-loving mind. He finally caught his breath and told them how he thought that rope was a panther, hot on his tail, a-chasing him out of the woods. And them brothers, they never let him live it down. They even told their young'uns and grand-young'uns about it. And his dog? Well, Old Blue had got bored and made it back way before Dad. He was fast asleep in the barn.
So on that note, we hope you enjoyed the episode and that you're telling your family and friends to tune in. We're always like to remind you to send your spooky stories, whatever they may be about, to sirensofthesupernatural@gmail.com. And don't forget, next week we won't be releasing a regular episode on Friday, but we'll be back on the 2 days leading up to Halloween with the first of our Sunday scaries.
That's right. And on Halloween night, we've got a very special treat for our listeners. The highlights of our all-night on-site investigation at the Martha Washington Inn, which is known as the most haunted building in Virginia. You'll be hearing from some special guests on that episode too, and you'll also want to follow our socials because we'll be posting some special moments from the investigation.
That's right. We're Sirens of the Supernatural on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and of course Supernatural Sirens on TikTok. Stay spooky.
Spooky.